we might start with a story that's actually technically from last night, but I thought it's really important to share with old mate, Nicole McKee.
Former gun lobbyist.
Because I'm not using the word corruption, but any time that we talk about these conversations and we talk about, former lobbyists who are now MPs and seem to have a particularly strong vested interest in the area they used to lobby, maybe a better, safer word to use would be conflict of interest, Chewy. But what's also happening at the moment is things are happening behind closed doors that we don't know about. Things are happening in the gun world, in the firearms world, that are happening behind closed doors, that if the opposition was doing anything like this, these guys who are in would be screaming undemocratic. They'd be screaming, these guys know best. They'd be screaming nanny state. And as is always the case, when they normally yell out an accusation at someone else, it's an admission to what they do themselves.
Always.
This is from last night, but I also want to show you a clip just to make it really clear as to who Nicole McKee is and where her priorities are.
Government Minister Nicole McKee has made urgent changes to New Zealand law to benefit gun clubs. Documents obtained by One News show she convinced the government to update the arms regulations through a backdoor process earlier this year, avoiding public consultation. Thomas Mead with his exclusive story.
This week, Nicole McKee came to the place where a gunman once killed 51 people, ready to brief survivors on her plans to overhaul.
And also, they do say this in the story, but notice about the attire she's wearing to go into a mosque.
That's exactly what I was going to point out.
Yeah, she makes it very clear at the end that she ain't going to be wearing none of those headdresses. You get me, and I'm just me, So, no, is Kay surprised? No, not entirely.
Called gun law as protesters stood somber outside.
The government does not care about even the safety of the people who are here today.
But documents obtained by One News show she spent a lot more time listening to gun owners. Ms. McKee is Associate Justice Minister responsible for firearm control and a former gun lobbyist. We've obtained talking points showing she's kept those close ties, repeatedly meeting with the gun lobby and gun clubs in an official capacity and attending an AGM for the Council of Licensed Firearm Owners, telling lobbyists the visit felt like a homecoming. After criticising the previous government for what she calls rushed lawmaking, Ms. McKee's already used her power to help change the law for gun clubs.
Do you think this is hypocrisy?
No, I don't think it's hypocrisy at all because
we're doing it. I mean, it's only hypocrisy when the other guys do it, but when we do it, sweet bix, bro.
The bigger changes that we plan on making will be going through a select committee process.
Documents show she put...
So the bigger changes, but the small changes are okay. So small changes undemocratically are okay. Big changes undemocratically are not okay.
Push for a process called Order in Council to quickly remove recently imposed reporting requirements on clubs, including information around the sale of firearms. Officials at the Ministry of Justice warning the change relied on evidence from one group of stakeholders and was being done so quickly they couldn't run public consultation or even test the implications, meaning it could compromise public safety. But the minister disagrees.
The changes that I have made will support clubs and the volunteers that run them and run the ranges to continue to operate. So I've given them some immediate relief that does not impact on public safety.
Are you valuing their opinion more?
Yeah, that's exact. How do you know that? Because you say so? Because, I mean, let's be fair. She might be right, but because there hasn't been the ability for the research to be done and looked into it, we just don't know. Now, when we say she might be right, the equal and opposite is also possible, which is she might be wrong. And in this instance, like when they ignore official advice on some things, you kind of go, like we've talked about the ferries, it'll be embarrassing when we should have had new ferries in the ferry. We've still got breakdown in the middle of the harbour, but I mean, it'll be an inconvenience. Yeah, but this time, if this is wrong, it could involve dead people via firearms. Seems to me to be a bit bigger of a risk set to just go out and do what you want as you want, Chewy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Highly than the general public's.
If I were doing that, then there would be a lot more orders in council going through. The fact of the matter is that the stakeholders, 250,000 people, had been ignored through previous legislation. I believe I'm doing the right thing by being or giving them an ear.
The changes will
it'll slip of the tongue there, being or giving them an ear, meaning being their advocate, being their, or giving them an ear. You know, sometimes you kind of the truth comes out underneath just slightly and accidentally, maybe.
were approved by her ministerial colleagues, but the process is still raising concern.
This allows the Order in Council process to become the minister's own personal way of making law, rather than following a process where the problem's reviewed, considered, discussed, and then the decision's made what to do.
Ms McKee is promising to consult on future gun law changes, saying nothing has yet been drafted for a planned rewrite of the Arms Act. But this Muslim leader feels it's a show.
I mean, she should be absolutely honest about it. She doesn't need us. She doesn't need consultation because she's already got her mates.
She decided not to wear a head covering to Al Noor this week, a dress code common at mosques around the world.
I'm not going to do that. I am who I am. This is how you get me.
And then she was gone. Work to overhaul gun law to continue while opponents feel unheard.
It's just interesting looking at this car, Chewy, because these second-hand Corollas are looking pretty flash these days, eh? You know? I mean, that's all you need, right, to get from A to B is a second-hand Corolla. Man, I wouldn't mind getting myself one of those second-hand Corollas. So it's looking pretty flash. Now, look, I actually think the cultural aspect part of this about wearing a headscarf and, you know, attaining or adhering to common cultural practices, someone doesn't have to do that. But I also think it speaks volumes as to why they're not doing it. You know what I'm saying? So that's a part of that. But Chewy, I want to show people one more thing around this. But first of all, you get in there, sir.
I absolutely want to talk about this. You know, I am who I am. I'm not going to do that. This is how you get me.
Yeah.
Shows an absolutely stunning level of arrogance.
Yeah.
That as someone that is rewriting the Arms Act seemingly by stealth, by only talking to gun clubs and those guys and calling them the stakeholders and that sort of thing, and then to go into the very same mosque where New Zealand suffered its worst mass shooting event, its worst terrorism event.
Yeah.
And to not even cover her hair as a sign of respect. Like, I have been in mosques. I am not a believer. I don't believe in God. But if I go into a church or a mosque, I'm walking into their house.
Yeah.
I will show those signs of respect. I acknowledge that this place is important to you. That is what you do when you're a functional, empathetic human.
Yeah.
And that would be the same for whatever mosque.
Yeah, but not even
whatever
mosque.
Situation.
Yeah, but not even mosque. This is the thing that's always ironic. If the Queen, or it's now a king, isn't it? If the king turned up, I guarantee you that she would adhere to what the customary way of addressing. She wouldn't just go, "Oh, you get me. I'll slap him on the ass because you get me as you get me." You know what I'm saying? So I'm making an assertion, and I can't show you proof of this, but I would not be surprised if it was a non-religious cultural adherence, there would be less pushback by these kinds of people, Joey.
Yeah. This is absolutely a dog whistle, and a very, very loud one to axe voters who hate Muslims.
Right.
And there are a lot of them.
Yeah.
So that's what that is. She's got a 2-for-1 there. The other thing is, every time they mention that Nicole is a former lobbyist, I think we just need to scrub the former.
Yeah, seems that way.
Because she's got the keys to the castle now, and she's doing her old job for her old mates. And she's absolutely going against all advice, sneaking shit in the back door. And as a person in this country, I would like to consider that I am a stakeholder in this, because my body, now this might shock you, Pat, this body is vulnerable to bullets.
Oh, real?
So I would like to say that I am a stakeholder. But apparently not.
And that's the other thing.
Where's
And
my lobbyist?
People have been mentioning it in the chat. 250,000 people haven't been represented. Does that imply the other 4.75 million, 4,750,000 have been? So, it's a big group of people, obviously, but it's still a tiny slice of the population. But sure, let me play this other bit now, because what you've just said, as always, Kind of leads well into our last clip. I said this last week a bit flippantly. I said in her maiden speech, she got up and pledged her allegiance, and she said she was there for the gun lobby. Like, that's who she was in Parliament to represent. Have a listen. This is a slice from her maiden speech.
So take this opportunity to thank the firearms community, especially the entities that make up the Council of Licensed Firearm Owners, 12 of New Zealand's biggest sporting and representative organisations that make up the council, known as COLFO, the bodies that provide Olympic, Commonwealth Games and World Championship
and the firearms that sometimes terrorists use, sometimes.
Competitors, the largest NGO representing licensed firearm owners in New Zealand. You have persevered for a rational approach to firearms legislation.
So she's speaking to the gun lobby right now. She's speaking directly to them.
Wanting to be a part of the solution. You have never been the problem, despite such accusations by the police, the government, and the media. You held strong in your approach through the adversity of not having any meaningful involvement in the legislative process. You represented on behalf of so many affected by the rushed legislative changes and kept calm despite the bias. Rational, thoughtful thinkers who I have been lucky to work with over the years. The korowai that I wear today was presented to me by COLFO. I wear around my shoulders their hopes and expectations that they will be respected as a part of the New Zealand community and be able to take part fully and properly in the democratic process. They have elected me the task of advocating on their behalf.
Yeah, that they, COLFO, they have elected me the task of advocating on their behalf.
They have elected me the task of advocating on their behalf in the manner that I have conducted myself over recent times. The weight of their expectations rests upon me.
The weight of the expectations of COLFO rests on her shoulders. Now, stuff didn't quite get the full thing there. I put it out today. Just by chance on my Twitter feed. I want to finish off what she said straight after that. Right? Remember, she's currently speaking to the gun community, and they finished here. The weight of their expectations rest upon me. She goes on to say, but their respect and support also embraces me. Tied around my shoulders in a shroud, 2 feathers from this korowai fell to this chair when I wore it on the day of swearing my oath of allegiance in this house. I keep those feathers in my cabinet as a constant reminder of the oath I have taken and the community I have sworn to represent. The community I have sworn to represent. Nicole McKee is there, her words, for the gun community. That's why the community I have sworn to represent, after just talking all about her involvement and, deliberations and stuff for the gun community. So, conflict of interest, other people use that C word. It just seems
I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it, Pat. This is corruption. This is conflict of interest. It is corruption. She is putting one oath, this oath that she's apparently made to firearms owners, above her parliamentary oath. Like, this is someone that is part of government because 8% of people voted for ACT.
Yeah.
And of that, a percentage of those guys are, I assume, COLFO. So, really, she is there rewriting the laws around firearms for this entire country. A best opportunity to prevent another Christchurch shooting, or shooting like in Christchurch, or another mass shooting, terrorism-related event. She holds in her hands the best opportunity to stop the flow of weapons to gangs. And that clearly isn't her focus.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, I'm just going to remind you one more time. Remember, she's talking about the korowai. Funny, people in the chat are saying, "Oh, she's okay wearing that cultural attire, the korowai that she's wearing, etc., etc." And she's talking to the gun community, and then she said, "They have elected me the task of advocating on their behalf." There being the gun community, mentioning specifically Kolfo by name. The weight of their expectations rests upon me. And she keeps feathers in her cabinet as a constant reminder of the oath I have taken and the community I have sworn to represent. I mean, I know we always go, imagine if one of the other, like a Greenie MP got up and just talked about, the electric car community. That's all they're going to represent. What would they be saying? It's just, I'm dumbfounded.
Look, there is clearly and obviously a place in New Zealand society for firearms. I don't think anybody is arguing for a full disarming of the entire country. We're a nation of farmers and hunters and all sorts of stuff. Shotguns and rifles, go hard. If you want to be a competitive shooter, awesome. If you want to be a pistol shooter and you can meet those very high requirements, have at it. We're one of the most heavily armed countries per person, per capita in the world. I think we're up there with Canada for very similar reasons. Let's just refocus here that there are two things that this rewriting of the Arms Act should accomplish, right? The outright banning of military-style semi-automatic weapons, just in the bluntest language possible. We've spoken about this before. She will use NRA talking points like we'll start debating high capacity magazines or the shape of buttstocks or parts and that sort of thing. No, if it's fed with a big magazine and it's semi-automatic, we don't need it. You're a shit hunter if you have to use one of those. And there's already a carve out for licensed pest control. The guys that go and shoot herds of feral goats and that sort of stuff. They're allowed to have those under very strict requirements, as is correct. And then the other part of something is something that her colleagues in ACT and her colleagues in the right will bang on about, and that is the flow of arms to gangs. And she stands against one of the best tools that we have for that, which is the firearms register. I do not trust this woman. She is not there for the benefit of all New Zealanders. She is there for a very select few who are putting the lives of their fellow countrymen against their hobby. And they're like, my hobby is more important. And that's the price that we have to pay is 52 people in a place of worship every now and then. I'm happy with that as long as I get to keep my hobby.